Hello, it is Friday the 12th of January and we are heading into a 3-day holiday weekend. On Monday it's Martin Luther King Day in the United States, so the New York Stock Exchange is closed. The ETFs will not trade on Monday, neither will the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and the CME futures will be on a short day holiday schedule, which you can look up. So for most of the US trading session, the CME Bitcoin futures will not trade either. So really for crypto, we are heading into a bit of a 3-day weekend, and we need to be a little bit careful and trade accordingly because it's just going to be a little bit quieter, a little bit longer, and we're also some really important levels. So as you know, I was thinking when we got to this big 50% level in Bitcoin, which was let's get this all on a weekly chart. This is Bitcoin spot. So when we got to this 50% retrace level from the highs, because I wasn't sure whether this is going to be a really super nice bullish move or not, I kind of got rid of any leverage positions. So I'm just like long Bitcoins with no leverage at all, because I thought that the ETF could get a little bit bumpy and spiky, and that's exactly what we'd seen. I had been looking at these fib retraces a little bit differently, measuring from this low to high, and I thought that we could potentially get to 54,000, but my first target was always 44,000, and we achieved it pretty nicely. And kind of once we go beyond there, unless we get a bigger pullback to some moving averages, I kind of don't like to be too leveraged long. One thing as well as we went into this ETF announcement was just the sentiment has been so bullish. Now, the ETFs have been launched, and I have to say it is really bullish. I don't think I've ever seen an ETF launch with such volume so quickly. And we've had, let's face it, we've had spot crypto ETFs in Europe for a while, but the inflows have hit 2.5 billion in only 2 days of trading. I think actually that was today. The cumulative total for 2 days is now 7.1 billion. 7.1 billion invested in Bitcoin ETFs in 2 days. That's quite something. What I didn't anticipate though was what was going to happen with the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, because as we headed into the ETF, it was really underperforming. I actually thought that they weren't going to get approved, and that the market was expecting the ETFs to approve, but they would not get permission to convert. And they did get permission to convert, which means, of course, that if you invested in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, they held 25 billion worth of Bitcoin that's been locked up for a very long time, and people couldn't sell it. And so once that kind of option was there for people to sell, I think that's what they're doing. And so if we look at the what's going on today with the inflows and outflows, you can see 95 million today in Bitcoin sold by the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. So that's just one measure. Like, a lot of it could be over the counter as well. So quite a lot of Bitcoin for sale from the Bitcoin Grayscale Trust. Now, if they're not buying ETFs with it, but they're diversifying, buying something else, this could actually be a little bit of a negative for Bitcoin for a while, and it could be a little bit choppy. Now, when I put these fib retrace levels on, from the high that we made in November 2021 to the low that we made in November 2022, we reached exactly this 61.8 fib level. And I said I was quite surprised at this reaction, because these other fib levels, it's been very messy and choppy and sideways. Initially, when we get to this 236 fib, we had a good reaction, and then it got really messy. At 38.2, we kind of paused for 1 week, and then we blasted through it, and then choppy and sideways again at this 50% level. And as you know, that for me, the 61.8 fib level, if you reverse at one, and these are the fib patterns that I really kind of love, and they're my bread and butter every day, and you close back underneath this 50% level, the pivot level in the middle, you will go down to the 38.2, and that's also where the weekly, brings us back to the weekly moving averages. And you can see previously in 2021, when we were in this range, it was very choppy this as well. So back to these previous lows, and 42,200 in the spot becomes really important support underneath it, and we're going to drop a lot further back to this swing low at 35,000 and potentially lower. Now for me as a trend trader, all the way from the lows in September, when this all got really exciting, we've held this daily 20 moving average really well, and we've never closed underneath the daily 50, and every time we've pulled back to it, which was in October and on the 4th of January, it's been support. So we can say that closing underneath this daily 50 means for now this uptrend is over and we're in a bigger retrace, and potentially we could come back to the 200 moving average, which is even lower. So short term, for me, the other easy way to look at it, if you're a 4-hour trader, let's look at this 4-hour chart, is this 4-hour 200 moving average is key support. I'm going to put my Heiken-Ashi on. I'm going to bunch up. So, and it, this really does for me work. This is why I love the 4-hour time frame, because this 4-hour 200 moving average is so reliable, and all the way through the chop in at the beginning of this month, this 4-hour 200 moving average has held a support underneath it. We're going to retest 42,200 and a daily close underneath here, remember, or if a close underneath and it becomes resistance, and we're going to see this bigger pullback. So this is why I am not leveraged long at this point, and if we start losing this 200 moving average, I'm not going to be long Bitcoin at all. In fact, I'm probably not going to be long crypto, and I'm going to be selling some things and waiting for that bigger pullback. But my shorts will be not Bitcoin, and they'll be shorter term trades, to be honest. Big picture, there's a lot of, this is a pullback after we got overbought in an uptrend, basically, and there are a lot of fundamentals which are bullish for Bitcoin this year. Potentially, the halving, liquidity coming back, rates getting cut, all of those things are pretty bullish for Bitcoin. However, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, like World War III, and we don't even know how Bitcoin is going to do in a war. So for me, though, I like moving averages. They're really good trend indicators, and we are pretty bullish on this weekly, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have a big pullback towards them and retest them for support. And so if we lose 42,200, I'm going to be out, and we're going to come back to 36,000 and look for support there again. Now, does this mean that other crypto could do the same, like ETH? Yeah. Now, sorry, there's just one more thing I was going to say about Bitcoin. If we go to the monthly here, I'm just going to put regular candles on. Now, we could very easily at this 61.8, 38.2 level do a wave 4 here. So if we say this is our wave 1, wave 2, this is a wave 3, a wave 4 here would not be crazy. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. And yeah, so sometimes wave 4s you can go sideways in time and not price. So we could potentially, between these fib levels, do 5 waves here before we go higher. This was a very kind of simple 3-wave, but it was a bit of a running flat. It wasn't a regular, it was, like this. So it won't look like that for this wave 4 if we're going to keep going higher, but it could just be a simple 3-wave and then we go up again. But it does look to me like we're starting a correction. Now, I had thought the Bitcoin was going to hit this 50,000 level. If we close underneath this daily 20 moving average, I don't know. One of the reasons I'm not going to rule it out is we could see a bounce next week is because Bitcoin does very often double top at big levels. So even on the weekly, you can see what I mean. It's not normally one touch and a turn. You'll make a big long spike, we'll go back, everyone says, oh, that's it, we're going up again, and it'll just retest the high. Even when we made the big high here in October 2021, we made a sharp high, really nasty pullback and then we tested it, and I'm not ruling it out here. But in this instance, I think that we can probably, if we look at it on the weekly, say that we've probably got 5 waves up here from the September low, and so potentially we are in line for a bigger pullback in Bitcoin. So I'm being a bit careful. Now, these are all opportunities, you know. If it's only if you do nothing and ride it all the way down and then ride it up again and go, oh phew, that it's not an opportunity. So I was thinking that we had more upside in ETH, and I had a target up here of 3,000, and that is where this swing would be 1.618 of this first swing. However, as you know, sometimes we don't get there. Now this is a 38.2 fib, which for me is a very messy level, 2,400. And this is what we said at the start of the week, we need to hold above if we are going to keep going higher. And it's at 2,400. And it looks like to me we're going to come back and retest it. If I put this on a weekly, why might we be done here? Well, one of the reasons is, you know, very often wave 1 and wave 5 are equal. So if I measure from this low to high and project it from here, that's kind of exactly where we stopped. Now that's quite interesting because, you know, when you do that equal measured move, this 61.8 then becomes important trend support. So that kind of makes it easy for me here with Bitcoin, because now I can say, right, 2000, if we're going to keep going higher and not make a bigger correction, 2,400 needs to hold as support. It's really good support and resistance if we go left. But I'm going to be pretty bearish if we get back underneath 2,200 for a bigger pullback in ETH. And if this is potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we could come back to these lows, couldn't we? Now, another way to look at it is, now I've been really bullish ETH because I thought this was a big 3-wave correction, right? From the high that we made in November 2021 to the low that we made in May 2022. What if, though, this was a wave 1, this is a wave 2, and we're in this kind of wave 3 thing? Now, Elliott wave people will go, no, that can't be right, because look, we're in this wave 1 territory. If we don't close in this wave 1 territory, if you follow Robert Miner, he has kind of a little bit looser rules about Elliott wave, and not if you, as long as you don't close in the wave 1 territory, it's valid. And if we were to close the week here underneath this level, we have not closed in it. And quite often, to be honest, ending diagonals and leading diagonals are a bit choppy anyway. But let's just say this is potentially a bit of a level, and we need to watch out. And what if this is not one ABC and we're in a big upswing again? What, in fact, if this is 3 and we're in the middle of it? Well, that again puts us at a bit of maybe a 61.8 level, and that kind of lines up, doesn't it, with where we are here with the bearish reversal level, because this 50% pivot level in the middle, which lines up with this low, would be our bearish reversal. So I'm not going to be bearish Bitcoin unless we get back underneath 2230, but I think we could be in a bit of a bigger correction if we do. And if we say, well, what if this is actually, so 2230 becomes really important. What if this is a big rising channel? Something like this. Then underneath 2230, we could come back to the bottom of this channel. We could come back at least to the weekly moving averages. So we need to be a little bit careful. It's a long way to April, which is when we get our halving in Bitcoin. Now, quite a lot of alts are looking pretty ropey, to be honest, little toppy, not ropey, but toppy, a bit like Bitcoin here. And let's take a look at where we are in ADA, which is one that I've been following. And for me, this is really no man's land. If we look at this on the weekly, zoom out here, we've got in trouble at a really important resistance level with this weekly 200 moving average. That was trouble back in August 2022. And we are having a little bit of a bearish reversal. A bit like quite often, you know, when you do this, especially, again, there is a possibility that we've done 5 waves up here, or it's just this swing, 5 waves up. So we could fall further back to these weekly moving averages. The key question for me is, when we had this bounce this week, was, is this a new upswing, or are we going up again or not? When I am not sure, and especially if I think it's a big 3-wave correction like this, I put my fibs on from the high to the low, and I look at where we are, and we kind of go level to level. And in this case, this 38.2 level was resistance, and it's also pretty good support and resistance. Could it be support on a pullback? It kind of should be, if we are in this sideways range thing, right? So from the high to the low, we're in that golden ratio zone again, between the 61.8 and 38.2 levels, where the market very often kind of goes back and forward. The bulls and bears have a bit of a fight, and we decide which way we're going next. You know, we could call it that, or we could call it distribution. For me, this 50% level in the middle is also always a pretty decent pivot level here on the daily. So if we bounce, then we can say, if we bounce from this 38.2 level at 54.62, we probably are, with these way these daily moving averages are lined up, we probably are going back up again if we get back above 0.57. If, however, we continue underneath this and then back underneath this daily 50 moving average again, I have to say that there is a potential that we're going to do another leg lower here, and we are not done. But for me, I'm really neutral. This is not a sell or a buy at the moment with the way this looks with these daily moving averages. We are bunched up waiting for a breakout, and when this happens, I'm just neutral. So I don't want to kind of be long being waved around at this moment. I think that there is a potential that this is a lower high. If I go down to the 4-hour and look at how we've rallied here, it's looking a little bit like a 3-wave correction, isn't it? If I measure from the low, looks like a little bit of a measured move correction. This kind of makes it easy, because when you have this measured move correction, as you know, when you get back under that 61.8 level, that like confirms the reversal. So if we were to draw that here, we can say that underneath 0.589, we're probably going to see more downside. That's also where these moving averages are. But here in the middle, I'm kind of neutral. We could bump around here, and I'm pretty sure whichever one I decide it's going to do, it's going to do the opposite. You know, quite often when you see this, you know, and you go, oh, that's a sell, look, and actually it's in a little bit of a rising channel, and we could potentially, unless we break out of it, just keep going higher. You know, I'm not gonna I really don't have, I don't think ADA is giving us a clue yet which way we're going to go next. Some of the other bigger blue chip ones like Ripple are doing the same. They're messing around here in the middle, and we could argue that we've done a pretty bullish 3-wave pullback. We pull back to the weekly 200 moving average. This is exactly where, if we're going to buy it to continue higher, we would want to be doing it. But everything is bunched up, and we have not broken out yet. So again, this is another one. We're in that 61.8, 38.2 chop zone. We could take all this off and say, here's our consolidation channel, if you like this. And unless we, you know, unless we break out of it, we're still grinding lower in this channel, and we're not on our way up again either in Ripple. So when I see a channel like this, I kind of like to see, you know, I think it's really good, you know, buying off the lows and having a target of the top, and then obviously if we break out, we keep going. So no, right here in the middle of the range though, with flat moving averages going sideways, which means no trend, I have to say this is a classic don't diddle in the middle, because honestly, right here in the middle, this could go either way, and I wouldn't want to bet which way, not even with your money, never mind mine. Okay, now there are some coins that are looking really interesting. PEASDAI stablecoin. This is one of those ones on the weekly. It's just gone up for 3 weeks in a row. And this is one where I'm kind of using those fib projection levels for targets. And here we are closing at new highs. I think potentially this could keep going higher to 6.68. The only thing that concerns me is this is quite a long tail on today's candle on the upside. And when we did this here, we had quite a bit. Each time we've had that big long tail on the upside, we've had a little bit of a pullback. And so potentially we could be in a little bit of a toppy pattern. The problem with the final legs of a trend is, you know, when you start out in a trend, very often it'll make very nice and the waves don't bleed into each other. And then when you get into the final swings, they kind of overlap each other and it's not quite so much of fun of a ride. So, yeah, you know, at this point, I wouldn't like to say that these previous highs should be support. We could even see, you know, a little bit of a bigger pullback and a bigger sort of even 3-wave move before we go higher. But certainly this, for me, if we continue higher and we only do shallow pullbacks, and if you're long, I think that we could see a shallow pullback, and I like 6.6 next on the upside, and that's why. Yesterday we were looking at SUI because I think SUI still has some more upside, and it's doing very nicely. So I've drawn retrace levels in this. Now I put my Heikin on the daily where we've broken out from pretty nice 2-week consolidation and we're in our upswing. We are getting very close to this kind of, from this high to this low 50% level, which could be a little bit of trouble, and potentially a measured move level a little bit higher. And if we look left, we can see these levels were also previously pretty important support and resistance. So I am going to say with this one that this round number 1 and this 38.2 fib level needs to hold a support if this one's going to keep going higher. This is what we said when we looked at this last night. But for now the next focus is going to be 1.23. Holding above 1.23 says 1.43 next, and so on and so on. And if SUI is going to be our next exploder, we really do need to kind of get above this 50% retrace level. The problem is that if everything has a bit of a nasty pullback, this could have one as well. So watch out for that. Okay, let me know if there's anything you'd like me to look at. But again, please trade very carefully. If we start losing track, honestly, don't hold on. If I learned one thing back in 2017 when they launched the Bitcoin futures, don't hold it and ride it all the way down, because it's really not fun. Cut the positions and are not going up anymore, and wait. It'll give you great opportunities.